Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing, the podcast for manufacturing leaders and professionals.
Designed for high impact on your way to work or unwind on your way home to gain clarity for tomorrow.
Step out of your comfort zone and discover new perspectives to add value, get results, and make a difference.
Yes, let's jump in.
When we talk about impermanence, we're talking about things that change all the time. Nothing's ever the same. That's part of the mindfulness, is that we can't get caught in how things are. You got to enjoy the moment and then enjoy the new things. And as part of our journey here with the podcast, Dave Baker will be moving on. And I'm excited today to pull out some more nuggets of Dave before he goes on to his next venture.
Yeah, it's exciting, Trevor. Thanks. And man, I appreciate the opportunity to co-host with you for Mindfulness Manufacturing, and it's been a great journey. Thank you.
I just don't have these sayings that you have, Dave, and I don't know where they come from, but I love them. So I'm going to have to make sure I got them written down, peeling back the onion, all the different things that you come up with. I love it. And as we usually do, we like to dive in with something for our listeners. So I'm going to play a little game here with you, Dave. If this was a special recording and you've had a great career and the rest of the recordings people can't hear anymore for whatever reason, and you're going to leave all your information that you know about manufacturing, what's true to you, what do you want to leave our listeners with? And they can only hear one recording from you. And they only can take away three things. And these three things Dave Baker knows to be true. And this is going to be like a capsule forever. What are three things, Dave, that you want to leave with our listeners?
Oh, wow. Man, that's a tall order, Trevor. You said a second ago, some of the sayings or just comments sometimes like peeling the onion or whatever that come out of my mouth. I don't know where I picked those up. I can tell you three things that have probably been most important for me. If I was to leave our listeners with three things, it'd be this: raw, real, and relevant. With what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're experiencing, man, at the end of the day, you've got to be raw, real, and relevant. And I'll unpack that if I can, but we talk about mindfulness, that's what this is all about. And if you want to remember one thing from me, it's be raw, real, and relevant.
Dave and I have these conversations about how much do we edit and clean up on the podcast? Because sometimes, you get odd things that happens during a recording. And the one thing I've learned from you, Dave, is it's okay to have some over talking. And sometimes I get caught up in the fact of I want it to be clean for
like this.
Don't do that.
Come on.
And then I have to fight to not cut that out. And you've taught me that we want our listeners to be real. We need to be real. And then sometimes I struggle balancing that with having a crisp, clear recording versus keeping it raw.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that I've learned in my manufacturing experience is that you've got to be real. It has to be more times than not just raw, where people say, you know what, this is the real deal. What I see is what I get. They say what they're going to do. They do what they say they're going to do. So at the end of the day, people need to see that, what's going on around them is the real deal. It's really what's happening, and not some airbrushed, fake, massaged, scrubbed event. People want to experience really what's going on, and not have to worry about looking behind the curtain and seeing, the wizard, right? I mean, nobody wants to operate or live in an environment that it's not where it's not real. And that's where, it's been just powerful. And the more real you are, man, the more people respect you, trust you, are willing to be transparent with you. And that's been a game changer for me.
And I would say I've definitely learned things from you, Dave, working with you over last year. And it is something that I've always thought about as well with social, whether it's social media or just how you look in front of a boss or a coworker. But, trying to be too polished and not raw is just kind of a waste of who you are. And we don't relate to people that are really, really polished sometimes. And just by having some form of vulnerability to say, hey, yeah, this is kind of how I'm feeling too. That's okay. I'm not feeling great about this. So let's talk that through, and what makes us feel great. What do we need to do?
Yeah. I mean, so just to back up a second, I mean, when I say raw, real, and relevant, let me unpack each of those real quick. I mean, raw is just say it like it is. Speak the truth. The truth always prevails, right?
Mhm.
And when you're being raw, it does not mean that you're being crude, that you're being insensitive, disrespectful. And there's ways to be diplomatic and times to be diplomatic, and then there's times not to, because people want to cut through. I want to hear what the message is and not have to filter through a bunch of garbage. I mean, and like real, it's just about, it's being approachable, being accessible, being authentic in who you are. And I'll give you a quick story. I mean, I was an HR director in manufacturing environment, and people saw me ride a bull at a local livestock arena on a Friday night. And we talked about it. People came and saw me, and they were like, man, we see you in a whole new light now. You're the real deal. You've got a life outside of just this title and this office and this responsibility that you have. And when people saw me ride this bull, it was the craziest thing. I mean, I did it once, didn't have the guts to do it again, because I stayed on long enough to satisfy my desire for what I always wanted to do. But I was the real deal after that for people, where prior to that, they weren't sure if I'm just this real guy with a real life or not. And that was an eye opener for me. And it's like, wow, whether it's, fishing, or whether it's card playing or shopping or seeing somebody downtown. I mean, people want to see the real you.
I can see you riding a bull.
Yeah, well, I did it. If you want to look it up on YouTube, type in Dave Baker bull ride and it'll show up, man. But being relevant, then, of the three, raw, real, and relevant, relevant is just, you have got to maintain the context, add value to what's currently going on, and remember that it's not always about you and what your agenda is. We've all got an agenda, but you've got to operate and stay focused on what is it that we're trying to accomplish here. In the manufacturing world, there's too much opportunity for people to push their own agenda, and to be relevant, you've got to know what you're talking about, have credibility, be reliable. And so when we talk raw, real, and relevant, that's the context of what I'm saying.
So if people are hearing this, Dave, is there a point to know what's too raw or what's over oversharing or crossing that boundaries? Where does that lie between being real and also being professional? How do people balance that?
Yeah, well, everybody's wired differently, and some people are more comfortable sharing with others. Some people are more comfortable in sharing their feelings and thoughts with others. And so it's definitely on a continuum, but with, however you're naturally inclined to operate, it's all relative to you have got to come across and show up as raw, real, and relevant every time. So a line would be crossed when you talk an illegal, immoral, or unethical type behavior, language, anything that, and I'm not necessarily talking about being politically correct. There's a time to call a spade, but to be diplomatic. Have there been times when me and others, of course, have crossed the line and being raw? Sure. Is it something to learn from? You got to know where that line is. When you talk about being raw, raw may have a negative context. It sounds raw, right? But it's just being straight up to where people know where you stand. I don't know if that answers your question or not. I kind of went off, but um,
It does make me think too, right? Just I remember at a Def Leppard concert, and there ended up being a bunch other team members from my department at that time. We were launching a plant, and it was like, you know what, that's okay. I'm not doing anything that's illegal. This is just who I am, and I just went with it.
yeah.
And had a couple of drinks, didn't do anything crazy, and you're right, it did build more credibility the next week, because it's like, oh, so you're kind of like me, you like to go to concerts too.
And that reminds me of a case. I had a lady working for me one time, and on Monday morning, the talk of the town was how this individual was literally climbing the light posts in the stadium, and was like half of her shirt was off. And then she came in, and she was limping, and that's being a little too raw, a little too real. In when you create an obstacle for others, or when you begin to impede your credibility because of how raw, real, and relevant you are, you're clearly crossing the line there.
Yeah. And I kind of think sometimes, I heard this from someone else, is that, would you do that if your mom was watching?
That's right. Yeah.
And you can probably be pretty safe on keeping raw and real, for sure, with that in mind, and still being authentic in who you are. We
Yeah.
talked about building trust, and you can't build trust until I know how much you care about me. And it's hard
Mhm.
for me to understand if you care about me if you're not real.
Yeah.
And everything always seems to be so perfect in your world. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, then I can't relate to that.
Early in my career, the plant manager, when I was working in HR, the plant manager said, "Hey, Bake, I want you to do some time in frontline leadership in a sterile filling environment and lead the sterile packaging room. And then after a year, go to the packaging line, which was downstream from the filling room." And I resisted and said no. But I tell you what, that was the best thing for my career, because the people in which I was serving in human resources capacity, they got to they got to see me in a different light. They got to see the fact I was a real person and I was in it with them. And regardless of the position that I held in this manufacturing environment, it provided a great opportunity to connect and just demonstrate that I'm a real person. Forget the job title, forget your job and your responsibilities. And that's huge. When people see that, you are who you are, it's a breakthrough. It can be a breakthrough moment for you.
And it takes a lot of pressure off of ourselves. Right now, it just seems that there's more and more pressure socially, whether it's just vaccination talks or whether it's mass or whatever that topic may be, politics. And the more that you have to present yourself maybe in a way that's not so raw, that takes a lot of effort. And if you can find that line where I can be myself, but that also entails me being professional. And when I go home, I don't have to be a different person.
Yeah.
Who wants to do that?
Yeah. That takes a lot of energy, burns a lot of life units.
So we want to spend our body budget, because each time you're trying to maybe not be as raw, that does take a little bit of effort. And there's a difference between being sensitive to how you're coming across to others and being raw. And like, I like what you said before, Dave, is the truthful part. Like, just tell it how it is, take that risk, and
Well,
then it's out there.
yeah. And when I say, say it like it is, it's about speaking the truth. That's what it's about. It's not about sugarcoating. It's not about, when you're being raw, you are speaking the truth. And there are good ways to speak the truth, and there's some, poor ways to speak the truth, right? And so, that's when you cross the line on being too raw. I mean, but at the end of the day, if the truth is coming out of your mouth, right? And I love this. I love this concept that, speak the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Well, sometimes, just because you don't speak the whole truth, you don't need to speak the whole truth. You need to speak enough that the point is made and off you go. You don't have to share the backstory behind everything going on. And people get wadded up on that.
When I get to know someone and they share a little bit more about themselves, and it just, oh, you're kind of like me. As soon as you get that feeling, that also gets the feeling of care. Where's this truth coming from? Is the truth coming from your own lack of self-confidence, jealousy, or is it just coming because you care about me, and that's just the way it is right now, and I needed to hear that?
Yeah.
And that's when you say, Dave, about just how we show up. Where is this coming from? What's some context around it? What does it mean to me personally that I'm sharing this information?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just taking that extra 20 seconds and just sharing a little bit of that. You may have a message you need to get out to that person on the shop floor that day. But where are you sharing that information? What's the impact would be to that person? How do they take it in such a way from care, from love, from I want you to be better?
It just makes me think about in being real and making that connection. How many of us are living with regrets because we weren't real at some point in the past or even now? And we could maybe do a whole episode and about living with no regrets. But if you're real and you're raw and you're relevant, you've got no regrets, in the sense that, hey, I spoke the truth. It is what it is. I'm not afraid to, I admit my mistakes and move forward. What happened is what it is. And hey, there's forgiveness out there, and there's moving on, making mistakes. I don't live with regrets. I won't live with regrets. There's ways to do that, right? And so to be real, man, if you're being real, you're not, it's maybe a platform or a stage to not live with regrets. And maybe that's just a benefit of being real. But man, if you're not real, you're looking over your shoulder saying, I wonder if I did the right thing. I wonder if I would behave the right way. I wonder if I said the right way. Man, be real, be yourself.
Yeah, and there's a difference with mistakes are going to happen unless you never take a risk, and that's no fun. So it's just a matter of, hey, I did this. I was myself. Don't totally regret it because I learned from it.
That's right. And it's not a regret. It shouldn't be a regret, I mean, in my opinion, but because it is something that formed you, shaped you, you learned from. And so how can you regret something that is something that has made you who you are today? Just be mindful of that.
So I think leaning into your own values, the work that we do on core values, staying to those, and we had recent episodes on that you can go back to. I had a neighbor ask me, it was during lockdown, and we saw each other outside, and he says, you always seem to be at peace, just kind of like who you are. And I said, well, that didn't happen overnight, and I was not always like that. But I think the work that I've done on myself, whether that's that self-reflection time, a little bit of that meditation time, that time to say, am I being true to who Trevor is? Am I being truthful to my people that are close to me? Where can I lean into that more? And it's not something you do after listening to a podcast episode, but I do hope the listeners can maybe walk away and think, am I being truly who I am? And would it be better for the people around me and for myself to be more of who I am? Because the more I can do that, the less effort it takes, the more I can help others, the more energy I have, less stress, the healthier, so many benefits.
Yep. And crazy enough, Trevor, I mean, what a great segue into relevant, raw, real, and relevant. When you talk about relevance, being able to keep things in context. I've got to go back to something I'm deep into right now. It's just reading the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, for crying out loud, all right? And Ecclesiastes is all about the fact that at the end of the day, nothing else matters but your relationship with God, right? And there's nothing new under the sun. Take time to put everything in context, but at the end of the day, there's nothing new under the sun. And, you talk about where do you find where, somebody had made an observation of where you get peace from. How is it that you're not all upset and worried about this and that? And it's like, well, there's a deeper sense of, man, you keep it all in context. And that's where this relevant thing is. Raw, real, and relevant. Raw, real, and relevant. I can point back to so many things that fit into one of those three categories. And that's what I guess I want to crush today is just, man, if you don't remember anything else from me, you be raw, real, and relevant, and the rest will take care of itself.
So what's an example on relevant that someone could apply driving into work today, Dave?
Well, COVID is coming back, right? I mean, the fear of the Delta variant, and there was a football game canceled, high school football game canceled last week because of the fear, right? And I'm not going down the COVID, discussion debate thing, but at the end of the day, what do I do now that this football game is canceled? Do I let it ruin my day? Is it the end of the world? Will there be the prospect for, next week's game or next year's game, or what? It frees time up for me now to do other things. It's just keeping it all in context and not letting it blow stuff out of the water. We tend to live, in the context of fear. And you may have heard me say this before, but I mean, when we're going down this path and we lose our context because we're not staying relevant, man, we get fearful of losing something. We're afraid of failing. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of the unknown and all the what ifs that are associated with that. We are not made with that's a spirit of fear is not what we're all about as human beings. We're just, we're beyond that. I'm passionate about that. Don't be fearful of rejection, failure, losing something. Man, just grab the bull by the horns and let's run with it. Stay raw, real, and relevant. And what we don't know will soon become known, because guess what? There's nothing new under the sun.
So what I'm hearing with the relevant is I kind of do this sometimes where I will catch myself getting wound up about a situation that's in front of me. I can tell my emotions are starting to rise. I can tell I'm more irritable. And I kind of do this thing where I kind of like zoom out. So I'm looking down at myself, maybe in my apartment, in my neighborhood, in the city, in the continent, in the world. I'm one person of 7 billion.
Yeah.
How relevant is this crisis that I see in front of me under everything underneath the sun? How
Yeah.
big is it? Is that what I'm hearing, Dave?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, we get hung up about making the truck, making the shipment, making the month, and in manufacturing. And at the end of the day, we go home and our power's out because a tree fell on the power line because of a storm that came through. Well, man, when you put it in the rest and you put it in context in the rest of the population of the world, man, I can't stand to watch the videos and the footage that you see what's going on in Haiti right now. I had a very close to a young man that was serving private security in Afghanistan a month ago, and thank God he's home safely now. But with all the problems and the issues, keeping things in context, could you imagine, like most of us, right? I'm not talking about the folks right now serving overseas, but could you imagine a takeover from the Taliban and you're wondering if you're going to be able to get out of the country alive or not, right? I mean, it's just, man, keep it in context.
Keep it in context.
I worked at an adolescent unit for in healthcare for um, 6 to 12-year-olds. And early in my career, when I was going to grad school, and I got caught up in um, the frustration with the mental health system and the mental health care. And I'll never forget my boss, Tom. He said, Dave, he said, maintain your sense of humor. Whatever you do, always maintain your sense of humor. And that has stuck with me my entire career, is where right now can I find the humor in what's going on right now? Because it is in there somewhere. And that was so helpful for me.
Yeah, I love the concept of when you're in a bad situation and things aren't going your way. Hey, maybe we will laugh about this one day. Not very funny right now, but I'm going to remember it. It's a significant event and it's going to be a story. And hey, that could be just at work where I have some now where I kind of look back and laugh at, and I was pretty stressed out and worried when they happened.
Yeah.
But now it's just it's scars on my arm that I'm proud of, that I got cut and beat up over the years, and that's just made me who I am. Dave, I want to thank you for joining this co-hosting podcast, the fun that we've had here, these 3 truths of raw, real, and relevant, and all the gifts that you give in helping others, and especially in manufacturing. And that's why I was really grateful that you joined me for the last year, because I know how passionate you are on, hey, manufacturing can become an industry where it's sought after to work, because there's great wages, there's great skills, and we can create this environment where we're aware of each other, where we care, and that we work together. And we look forward to coming to work every day in this
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
And we'll continue down that path. And I'm going to let you close it off here with our listeners, your final words, and bring it home.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, guys, I mean, just remember, whether you're in a leadership position or not, mindfulness in manufacturing, it's all about how you respond and how you plan and are intentional in your response. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day what is going on. People key off of you and where your head's at. And the more mindful you can be, it's going to change your industry, whether it's manufacturing or not. And people are drawn to somebody that is mindful. Bam, that's it. That's all I
Bam.
got.
And we will see you another time.
Take care.
Thanks for taking the time to join us today. How you show up matters.
We'd love for you to subscribe, share with a colleague, and tell us what you think.
Your feedback's important to provide this high-quality, powerful program that makes a difference in your life and others. Take care.
See you next time.